takes a little muscle. Beautiful, David. Thank you. Thank you. Let's just take a big, nice, deep breath together. Yeah. That's the very breath of the Holy Spirit. The whole spirit of love is right here in this room. And we are gathered in our bright colors to celebrate a life. The life, of course, of Alan Villiers. But when we celebrate Alan's life, we celebrate all of our lives. So there is just a celebration of life going on in this room today. That doesn't mean you can't have tears of joy or sadness. That doesn't mean we can't be in grief or mourning over the physical loss of our dear beloved friend or uncle or cousin or husband. We're just here to be together, to celebrate this short walk that we all have on this earth. And especially to celebrate this beautiful soul, this beloved one who has touched us in some way. Death is simply an ending and a new beginning, almost immediately, almost like that breath we just took. There is an ending, yes, of the physical, but then there is a new beginning. And so there is a rebirth for Alan. And we celebrate that as well. So keeping all of this in mind, let's take a moment to be in prayer together. We return to that whole spirit of love, that beautiful breath of life that moves through us in every moment, whether we are paying attention or not. Life is here, breathing us. And there is that pure spirit of love that lives in our hearts. And in that heart of ours also lives all those who we care for. And all of humanity. And all of the animal and the plant kingdom. All of life. And sometimes one of those souls touches us in a deep way, in a more intimate way. And so it is Alan that we bring forth today, this beautiful, kind soul, to say thank you. Thank you for your life. Thank you, God, for sending this amazing soul, this kind being, to walk beside us, positively impact our lives, for us to be able to give something to him in his lifetime and he to us in ours. Thank you for the laughter. Thank you for the tears. Thank you for the memories and the stories, the joy. We are ever so grateful for life itself, for a spirit that creates, and that created this one in particular, who we honor and celebrate today. And so it is. Amen.
The sun is slowly sinking down. The moon will soon be rising, and this old world must still be spinning round, and I still love you. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes, it's all right. I don't know no love songs. I can't sing the blues anymore, but I can sing this song. You can sing this song when I'm gone. It won't be long before another day. We're gonna have a good time. No one's gonna take that time away. You can stay as long as you like. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes. It's all right. I don't know no love songs. I can't sing the blues anymore, but I can sing this song. You can sing this song when I'm gone.
Good afternoon. My name is Sonia Schultz. We weren't sure who was going to come up to do the reading, but my husband and I had to fight it out. We both wanted to do this. We wanted the chance to express our love and gratitude for Alan in a very public way, and thank you for giving us that choice. The reading that Annie and Ellen picked is beautiful. The words are very poignant, and so to make sure that you're listening, there's a test in the middle of it. So I didn't memorize the lines, so if I mess up, hopefully Alan will give me a little nudge. Yeah. Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference in your tone, wear no forced air of solemnness or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little joke we enjoyed together. And Alan did like his jokes. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effort, without the trace of a shadow on it. Now here's the test. Take the deep breath, and I'm going to say his name with joy and gratitude, and then I'm going to put my hand out, and I hope that you guys will do the same, and we're going to practice. Okay? Alan. 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 I'm so grateful he's here with us, and thank you all for helping make that even more of a physical presence. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is unbroken continuity. I am waiting for you at an interval somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
this is not where it ends. I will carry you with me. Yeah, yeah. I will see you again. Oh, this is not where it ends. I will carry you with me. Oh, till I see you again. Said goodbye, turned around, and you were gone, gone, gone. May it be an evening star shines down upon you. May it be as darkness falls, your heart will be true. You walk a lonely road. Oh, how far you are from home. One year, two May it be the shadows call.
Pictures worth 1,000 words, they say. Hard to give words now, but you've really traveled through a journey of a lifetime. And Alan, it seems to me, from looking at those pictures, didn't really change much over the years. You could tell he was Alan when he was 5. Yeah. Same guy. Which I think is actually a testimony to who he was. Because when somebody is really authentically themselves, you have a sense of them, right? From the get-go, from the moment they've come into the world. And I have a sense that that's Alan, you know? It's just like, I'm Alan. Here I am. And nothing to fix, nothing to change, nothing to add to, just to be who I am. So maybe that's one of the great gifts we can take with us as this beautiful being who has touched our lives in so many ways. I want to honor some of those who are watching that are near and dear to Alan. So we have the ones that I know of are Alan's late brother, Robert's children, his 2 sons, Jason and Jeff. They're in Southern California and Wisconsin. So hi, guys. You guys can turn and wave to the camera if you want. Let's invite them in. And then also his cousin, Michael. Welcome, Michael. I got to speak with Michael on the phone. You're going to hear some of his stories. And Deborah. And Ian, Michael, Deborah, and Ian, hello. And we also have Aunt Shirley in England. Hi, Aunt Shirley. Welcome. And Tommy and Linda, cousins. Tommy and Linda, yes. And Kathy in South Africa, all the way from South Africa. Welcome. We are all around the world today. And Tom and Diane. In Canada. Hi, Tom and Diane. Is that everybody? As far as we know. Everybody else who's watching, welcome. We're so glad you're here with us today. So, on September 13th, 1956, in Auburn, New York, this little soul was born and named Alan Villiers. And there was a group who welcomed him at that time, who celebrated his arrival with great glee, like we always do when an infant is born into the world. There was his parents there and his older brother, Robert, and his older sister, Suzanne. And probably extended family and friends were there to welcome him too. And you know what happened on May 26th of this year? The same thing. The exact same thing. He was welcomed into his new place by his older brother, Robert, and his older sister, Suzanne, and his parents, and all those who loved him in this lifetime. And Scott, and probably all kinds of folks who we don't even know that touched Alan's life, and all kinds of folks that he never met before, but will come to know him and love him. And so that same kind of celebration, that same, there's a graduation and a rebirth that has happened here. That's what's happened for Alan. And that's why we say we celebrate. We celebrate the life we had with him, the life that he lived. We celebrate all that he did and ways that he touched us. And we also celebrate for him that he has ongoing life in a new form, or maybe formless. We don't know a lot about it yet, but we do know that we can also feel his presence here, and we've called it in, and we know that he is also present with us today. The soul took on many spiritual qualities, as a soul does. The ones that really stand out, that we hear about a lot when somebody describes Alan, is he was patient, he was kind, he was lots of different things, but some of them were sensitive and caring and compassionate and funny and kind and kind and kind. Anybody who met Alan, probably the first thing they would say was he was kind. That's what I want somebody to say when I go. Don't you? I mean, don't you want somebody to remember you as being a kind soul who walked on the planet in this authentic way and just touched souls and lives? His cousin Michael said he had his mother Gladys's heart and soul, and he was just like her. And Michael also said that Alan made everyone feel comfortable, just like his mother did. He was several years older, and Michael said that he always protected me. Well, except for that one time. So younger cousin Michael is with his older brother Ian and his cousin Alan, older cousin Alan. And Alan and Ian have cooked up this great game. So they take the bottom of a board game, just the cardboard bottom, and they get out their darts, and they say, "Hey, Michael, hold up the board." And so the first dart that Alan throws that hits Michael, Michael runs crying upstairs and drops the board, and he's done with the game, right? But he said, other than that one time, that he almost killed me, that he was really like an older brother in many ways, that he always welcomed Michael with open arms and always included him and was loving toward him. In fact, the family moved around a lot. They moved around the world, Alan's family, and so he got to see and experience the world. And when they finally got to California, his mother, Gladys, said, "Oh, thank God, there's nowhere else to go." And then they moved to Zimbabwe. But Alan stayed, because Alan was done at that point, and he maybe found bliss here in California. And so Michael said that when he came to visit Alan, that he drove him around in his gold van, and it was the early 70s. Was that the van we saw in the picture? Yeah, so Michael said, I was 16, and so I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. He said it probably was pretty hideous. So you can decide, you saw the picture. He said, but I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and Alan always made me feel like I was really special when I saw him, and he never acted like I was younger and he didn't want to hang out with me. You could see from the pictures that Alan loved the outdoors. He loved hiking, he loved camping, he liked the national parks like Yosemite and Yellowstone. He often traveled with his sister Suzanne and her daughter Jackie, who's with us here in the front row. And they went to Clear Lake and they went to local places and all these wonderful places. Jackie tells a story of when they were hiking the Oakland Hills and everybody slid in the mud except for Jackie. And so they all went down the hill, and Alan got the biggest kick out of this. So he was constantly retelling the memory of the day that they all had big muddy butts. And that was a favorite of his, wasn't it? And Jackie, you told me the story of when, he was kind of fatherly with you and you were a teenager and weren't really up for that, right? As teenagers often aren't. Didn't really want that fatherly advice, but yet, as Jackie told me, as she grew older, they grew closer because she realized what he was sharing with her was out of a deep concern for her and the choices that she was making at that time. And we can't talk about Alan without talking about Annie. They were together 26 years. And they were married for 10 of those 26. And Annie says they were really solid in their commitment to one another. They were really solid in their relationship together. That trust was deep in their relationship. Unity has a devotional magazine some of you are aware of called The Daily Word. It must be Alan calling. Hello? He's like, I want to interject something here. So in that word, in the Daily Word magazine, every day has a word, a guiding word for the day. And the word that day, the day of his birth, was trust. And so it seems very apropos that might be the word when Annie said, that really was the word for us, was trust. And they were definitely meant to be. They met doing theater together. And they actually specifically met when they were working on a show, interestingly called The Gift of Love. And during that time, Alan was on the tech team. And Alan came to an audition, and Annie had a couple of really good friends that were there sitting with her, that are right back there. Welcome. We're telling stories on you. Good, we got the A-OK to keep going. And so they were all sitting there, and these friends had been wanting to, connect Alan and Annie together. So there was a little bit of that matchmaking thing going on. And somebody happened to walk in about then and said they had a couple of extra tickets to a show. And all of a sudden, Annie's friends were completely unavailable to go. So that left Annie and Alan looking at each other, and they decided, what the heck? They'll go to the show together. So they decided they'd meet there. And Annie waited and waited and waited. And you know how a theater is. The doors are going to close, and you don't get to come in afterwards. And so she went in to the show, and there was no Alan. But at intermission, he showed up. He apologized, and she said, it's okay. And then she thought for a minute, got honest with herself, and then with him. You know what? It's not okay, she said. But she agreed anyway to go on another date. And she said on that first full date, she never went home. She said it was the easiest thing she's ever done in her life. And there were 3 key things that really made it to the top of her list to make that really clear and easy for her. She said Alan was really smart, and he could talk on any topic. He was able to converse on all kinds of topics, and so that interested her. She said he was also funny, and she never met a guy that she could be silly with, and he would be so silly with her. She said they played a lot. They laughed a lot. What a beautiful trait to have in a relationship. And finally, the final test, I don't know that she set this up as a test, but the final thing that she really appreciated about him, yes, it was a test. Yes, it was a test. That he was the first guy that her dog trusted. Right? That's an important test. So remember when they met at that playhouse for that first meeting, and Alan didn't show up to intermission? He didn't tell Annie this till a long time afterwards, that he had actually sprained his ankle, which was why he was late. And that's kind of just who Alan was. He was a guy of integrity. He was a man who didn't find it necessary to make excuses. If he was late, he just apologized. No need to explain, right? And he further explained this as one day they were watching TV together. And they're watching this report of an accident that had happened locally. And Alan says, oh, yeah, I pulled that woman out of the gully today. And she said, he would have never told me that otherwise. He just happened to be watching the television show. It says a lot about his kindness and his sense of humbleness, that he just did very naturally and authentically what was his to do. He flowed with who he was. I like the quote at the beginning of the show. It is what it is. Apparently he said it a lot. And it sounds like he lived it a lot. It is what it is. I am who I am. And this is the way it rolls. There's a scripture that feels like it's really a demonstration, a living demonstration of who Alan was in this way. He has told you, O man, this comes from Micah, what is good. And what does God require of you to do but justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? That seems to me to sum him up pretty well. To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. So 2 weeks into dating, Annie and Alan are snuggled up on the couch. They have candles lit everywhere, very romantic setting. And Annie says, who's Robert? And all the candles go out. Now, Annie was able from a very young age to communicate with people on the other side, but usually she didn't get a name. And this time the name was insistent. And so they just kind of were with this. And then eventually Alan realized it was his brother Robert, who had died at 27 years old in surgery after Vietnam when Alan was only 17. Later, Annie brought him to the spiritualist church. And Alan, she says, was very intuitive too, and he found a home there as well. In fact, he would run the service once a month when Annie was serving as a medium there. And so that was one of their spiritual homes, and still is an important part of their spiritual walk together, as well as this home at Unity, which we are ever so grateful that you found in 2006. And so Annie and Alan, as many would say, as many of you who know the two of them would say, they are two peas in a pod, meant to be together. Michael said his very favorite memory of Alan is when he went traveling. He was on a business trip traveling in Sacramento, and Annie and Alan came to have dinner with him. And he said he loved that memory so much because there was so much love between them. He said they looked at each other like they were just first in love, with that first love kind of glow. And he knew that Annie was really good for him and the right match for him. And that made his heart, filled his heart. He said they definitely were made for each other, and that Annie will always be a part of our family. And he also said that Annie brought the showman out in Alan. Michael said, I always saw him as kind of the supporting cast, but not after he met Annie. I saw him in a tux, I saw him in a kilt, he was emceeing shows. He said this whole other side of him came out. And he goes, and actually, I think he kind of liked it. It's clear he did. Many of you are nodding. Many of you have seen him MC here at programs here at Unity and otherwise. And Annie also, Michael says, that you helped Alan connect back to his family, to reconnect to Jason and to Jeff. And you also helped Michael reconnect to all kinds of cousins. And so for that, he is very grateful. That family continues to be a connection point for all of you and all of you of Alan and each other and the love that brings us together. Most of all, not most of all, but one of the other great things, aspects of Alan that really comes through is his deep sense of caring. He had a really deep sense of caring. If there was ever a family issue, Alan was the first one to jump in and help. They could count on him. When his parents were sick, he would work all day and then go take care of them in the evening. Sue would take care of them in the daytime, and Alan would take his shift in the evening. And this went on for many years until both parents made their transition. And after about 5 years, Alan and Annie looked at each other and said, so now what do we do? What's the next venture in our life now, since it has been so filled with care of Alan's parents? And then Alan was diagnosed with a rare form of eye cancer that about 90% of the people who get this die. But interestingly enough, they both worked at Kaiser. So during this time, he had radiation treatments, and he lost most of the eyesight in his left eye. But they both worked at Kaiser during that time, and Alan happened to work in the optical lab. And they also happened to the doctor who literally wrote the book that featured Alan's eye in this book that they happened to be flipping through one day together, because his was one of the earliest cases that was caught. It was caught by accident in a preventative kind of eye exam. And so it was his eye was featured there, and this was one of the two doctors that was an expert in this very specific kind of cancer. And so he was freed of this worry, of this concern, of this illness in the time of all these synchronistic events that lined up, them recognizing that they were working close to this doctor. So about that time, after 5 years, because everything seemed to happen in 5 years, after struggling with this, about that time, then Annie was diagnosed with MS. And the first 2 years were fairly aggressive, Annie shares. And so obviously then their attention was there on this next aspect of life, this next endurance of health challenge. So obviously your relationship, Annie, was one of great perseverance. Both of you, strength and fortitude. And one of the things that really I'm really struck by with both Annie and Alan is your deep sense of care for others, even in the midst of your own challenges. In the last year, when Annie was caring for Alan more, she started the Care Network here at Unity to help people who are ill or after surgery with meals and rides. And what a beautiful service, and it's a testimony to who you and Alan were as a unit, as a couple, what you brought into the world. When Jackie had hip surgery 4 years ago, Alan had broken his foot, and he came down anyway. He cared for the kids, he cooked, he cleaned, and he helped take care of Jackie. And Jackie says, it's just who he was. And Annie said Alan didn't blink an eye when her sister in Chicago was ill, and she wanted to go be with her. And so she went and was there for 7 months through her sister's transition. And Alan came for 3 months of that, and then they drove across country together to come home. And then just last year, Jackie's young husband made his transition suddenly, and Alan and Annie were the first to be there. They were there for 10 days, caring for the kids, making sure that everything was taken care of. And Jackie said Alan could have been a nurse. He was that good. He was that attentive. He was that loving and caring and compassionate. And he made sure that she was resting and not overdoing, and made sure that the kids had what they needed. And most of all, she says, it was his presence, his just being there, that made a difference. I really sense that, too, about Alan, not having known him really well, but his presence made such a difference. He had just such a kind and loving presence that was noticed without him really saying anything. He didn't have to say anything to bring that sense of presence. And so it's that, too, that we miss, but yet do we? Because it's that is not gone. That presence is not gone. And that love and that kindness and that humor is with us right now, right here, even though our eyes may not see a form. Our spiritual eyes, our hearts can feel that presence and know that it is right here with us. Of course, when Alan was caring for Jackie and her family, he made sure that she ate really well and that they ate really well, because Alan was a fabulous cook, I'm told. If you ever got to sample his food, you probably agree. I see lots of heads nodding. He loved to cook. That was one of his great gifts. And he showed us through all of these ways of caring and loving and nurturing. In many ways, it feels to me like he really embodied that very well-known, well-read scripture that is often used in weddings from Corinthians. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It does not insist on its own way. Love bears all things. Love endures all things, believes all things, hopes all things. Love bears the loss of those we love. Love endures through health challenges. Love remains patient and kind. Love helps loved ones and strangers alike, and it does not boast of its kindness. Alan kept on giving. Love keeps on giving. You know, Alan and Annie had a thing where they didn't buy each other gifts. They didn't buy birthday presents and Christmas presents and things like that typically. And in this last year, as Alan wasn't cooking as much, and Annie always said her cooking was terrible, she started to cook more. And so she was like, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was. Alan bought her a birthday gift. She didn't get to open it before he was taken to the hospital and made his transition. But when she got home, she saw the gift that was there that he had left. You saw it in the pictures. It was a cooking knife. And on it was his fingerprint. Yeah. And so all the times that you cook now, from this time forward, you can channel Alan. Apparently you can now. He taught her well. And there are so many things I know that he taught all of you in various ways, and taught all of us as we hear the stories of his life and see the beautiful pictures of his face through the years and feel it in the music that he and Annie also so loved. I would like to invite at this time forward his closest friend, Tommy Young, who wants to share a few words. Oh, I'm looking all around. Here's Tommy. Tommy, maybe you want to come on up to the podium. Get that out of your way.
Well, first, let it be known that Alan invited me here many times. And I always told him, one day, one day. Okay? So, yeah, mission accomplished. All right, so I am not here to add any of the attributes or personality aspects that have been so well and clearly communicated, but I think I'm in a special position to share some anecdotes from a different angle, because I believe I was uniquely in the right place at the right time to have the blessing of seeing his 5–10% that maybe some of you didn't get to see. Okay, so to draw a picture on how we came to meet, I relocated from the East Coast in 1983 and moved to Alameda. I was flown in from this island today to be here, and and the first apartment I took was, was just anywhere, and I've got to go to work, just take it. And it turned out to be this very nice Spanish-style 40-unit fortress. I mean, it was like Alcatraz with stucco. And I say that because actually it played a role. I mean, I really didn't, have friends outside of work, and I wasn't the type that would go to the beach and drink. I never understood that, and I still don't. But, and so it really was just too quiet. And then at some point, I decided, let's just try another part of the island. And the day I moved was the day I met Alan. And it was a very special, 1-hour period, and I'll tell you why. I didn't have much furniture, but it was the first time I had rented on my own, and I wanted that deposit back. And then if you're 23, you don't want to give any of that on the table, right? You don't want to leave any of it behind. So I did my best job. I know I did some areas that others probably wouldn't have seen if not cared about. In the end, the manager of the unit, which was an elderly woman who clearly had fallen into this role, who also clearly was not enjoying the role. And I asked her, I said, well, how'd I do? And she said, not bad for a man. I'm thinking, nice, okay. Okay, very good. So I got in the car and drove down, turned the corner, pulled into my new home. Couldn't have been more different. It was a fourplex. It had been a house. They built this box, and I was upstairs in the back in a one-bedroom, and Alan was in front. And as I pulled into my dedicated space, this very imposing large figure with a beard leans over, and I'm looking up and he's looking down, and he greets me with, hey, you can't park there. So at this point I'm thinking, what happened to all those Eagles songs? I mean, I thought California's supposed to be really nice, and this was the second time in 30 minutes, I'm like, oh, God. And actually I looked up and I said, actually I live here. And he goes, oh, okay, all right. So and I've told Annie this story recently, and what makes us so unique is that clearly this was out of his character. And I also reminded Alan of that recently, and we both had a good laugh, because at that moment, what were the odds that we would be lifelong friends, if not brothers? I mean, I don't think the odds makers would take money on that one. I mean, yeah. On top of that, that's really the only way we could have ever met. You go down job, industry, schooling, military, common friends, hobbies, except for eating and cooking, perhaps. And so I think that made it special. And then I've also would share with you what makes a bond between two people who on paper have no business being close friends, if not best friends. And I think that speaks miles for what Alan was about. I mean, that could only happen if that person is very special. So I'll fast forward. So through the years, we were not the friends who were together all the time or went out all the time, but we started off, as we would make jokes later, that we were almost roommates from the start because the new apartment was so lightly constructed not only hear all the good and the bad, but when on weekends, on occasion, when he would vacuum the common wall, not only could you hear it, but I swear you could see the dust like disappearing on my side, and I could tell he was going like from this direction, or at least I felt that. And I'd see him later in the day, and I'd say, "Dude, thanks for vacuuming. I really appreciate that." You know? So soon after that, he had some changes in his life, and he approached me and he said, "Hey, you know, you're over here all the time anyway. Why don't you move in? And you'll save $100 a month." And you know, this is 1983, which, as I now think of it, I mean, you could call Pac Bell would let you call San Jose for almost 45 minutes back then for $100, right? So that was like real money, right? And so that was great. And from there, we became roommates in a house I eventually bought, and so that was great. But the side of Alan that I enjoyed the most, that came from, I think, random, was that he would have an affinity for, I don't want to say disagreeing with me, but we just often fell on two sides of the fence on most things that were not important in life. So whether it be a brand, he was a strict Ford guy, which is you saw in his photos, and I was a Chevy guy. He was Safeway, I was Lucky's, and he'd always have to tell me about it, right? He'd always remind you about it. He wouldn't tell me that I was doing something wrong. He wouldn't try to pull me on his side of the fence, but he would always remind you, you know. So I think this is the parts that maybe that I was, you know, saw that or had the experience of. And in later years, that continued into, you know, the evolving of technology. I mean, he was a cable guy to the end, and I streamed. He was Android, I was iPhone. It just went on and on. And actually, it made it fun. It would extend sometimes to when we would go out, and we did this often. We would share meals together. He and I would enjoy eating late meals, and there were many times when we would either go to a new restaurant or an old restaurant, and I would say, "What do you want to eat?" And there was never a time I prompted him or suggested it, but often, we're talking all through the years, he would tell me, "You know, I don't eat organ meat." It wasn't like I was there with like chicken livers, like, you know, putting it in front of him, nor was I discussing that we ordered, but he somehow needed to tell me that, and I said, "I know, I remember." And, you know, so every like year or two that would come on, and even in the last 10 years. And eventually, I got tired of, you know, suggesting that. You didn't need to tell me that. So I went another route. He said, again, I don't eat organ meat. And I thought about it. And I said, "Why don't you try piano meat?" and then work your way up to organ meat. And he really liked that. He liked that so much that I believe that from that point on, there was probably another 5 or 10 times that he asked me that I believe subconsciously he just wanted. And that's a good friend, that laughs at a repetitive joke like it's the first time, okay? So this does come full circle. You know, I've been thinking for over a month on what I can share with you other than these little notes. But looking back, the big takeaway is don't let a database, whether it's in here or on a screen, dictate who you accept in life as a friend, okay? And also, don't let a first impression, I think, affect who you share your time with. Because I think in my heart, I really believe when he's telling me that I couldn't park in my space, I think, you know, in me, I'm thinking either this guy is or we're going to be close for the rest of our lives. So I was right. Okay, thank you.
So now Annie would like to open it up for anybody who would like to share a brief story or memory. And if you would come to the lectern, we'd appreciate that, because we'd like the people at home that are viewing to be able to see you. But if you're not able and you'd like to say something, please raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone. You know, the old story is if your heart is beating really hard, it means it's your turn to speak. So,
I'll just say one thing really quickly.
please.
I had the joy and opportunity.
Turn it on.
Okay, I did. It's on.
Do you want to come?
It's on.
Danae, do you want to come up to the lectern?
Sure. But we need it on for Annie. Okay, I'll just hold it closer. There we go. I had the joy and opportunity of working with Annie and Alan on staging the platform here and things since 2010. The first time I met Annie, I love it that you put it in the story. She said, we were talking about our partners, and she said, well, you know, I met my partner, I went home with him that night, and I never left. And I went, wow, okay, your name's Annie Love, I get it, okay, I get it. And then I met Alan, and then I really got it. I understood. Is there anybody else?
Oh, Jan.
Why don't you stay right there? How about you stay right there? You don't want to hold the mic? Okay.
It's okay. I met Alan and Annie 6 years ago, and I just want to say they are two of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I might cry, you guys. All those things that everybody said is so true about both of them. Very loving, giving, supportive, always there if you need them. And I just admired their relationship. You know, they just were exactly two peas in a pod. So compatible, so loving and giving toward each other, never limiting each other. I just really admired your relationship. And their love of animals, dogs, and I know Alan's with all your dogs now. But I just want to say I thought he was a wonderful man. He will always be in my heart. He was all those things, kind and loving and generous and supportive, and he will never be forgotten, never.
Oh, Danae, come on. So, I loved Alan. He always had a smile. He always had an open hand and an open heart. One of the most unique memories I have of Alan is the first time that we moved back into the sanctuary. We had 3 cameras, and we did the Easter service. And Alan was directing. And I saw a whole different side of Alan, that easygoing, anything can happen, oh, no worries. And then it was like, no, I want camera 1. Okay. And this whole other side of how he saw it and what he created when he was done. Because I looked at all the different angles and how he put it all together. And it was just Alan. It was just Alan. And he had such a way of being here and supporting the church, but he did it so quietly. He was always in the background. You almost never saw him, except when he got up and put on his tux and did a couple of the fundraisers. But he had such joy in his heart always, and for everyone. It's like he always had that spirit of, you're in my heart. What can I do? How can I help you? I'm here. And that's the joy, and that's the gift, and that's what I'll always remember. And pay attention. I want you to be camera 2. Okay.
You can sit right here.
Sorry.
The main thing that I remember about him, coming early to church, hanging out in the front, and just talking. Simple, nice, friendly talking. He was the guy that I would remember and see when I would come to the church early. And talk about, I mean, first of all these people here are so welcoming, but to have him, he was a guaranteed soul person that you'd see, and familiar, and just was friendly, and both of them were are that way, familiar and friendly. Yeah, that was the sweetness that I would always feel when I would come to church. That's it. Just checking.
I met Alan about pretty close to the same time you did. Yeah. We were working on that love show, whatever that love show was. Gift of Love, named after you. And Alan was, as all of you know and have heard many times up here, he was just so kind and giving and loving. And they had many dogs. You know, they had lots of pets, so there were tons and tons of pets. And I was over one time, and you had, I don't know which dog it was, but one dog was particularly sick and had to have a lot of surgeries and a lot of medications. Shaman, that was it. And Shaman was very sick, and I came over and spent some time with Annie and Alan, and Shaman wasn't doing so well, so I went over and I started petting Shaman, and Alan says, "Be very careful, that's our yacht you're petting."
Is our golden retriever costs $25,000 in health bills.
So that $25,000 went to the golden retriever instead of us buying the boat that we had wanted. So.
Right.
Mine is just a brief anecdote. We had a summer concert here last year, and of course, Alan and Annie were heavily involved in the directing and producing and laying out everything to make the concert actually work, which with all these diverse parties going on was quite a challenge, especially with certain diverse parties who may be standing on a stage right here. But so Alan decided that he was going to introduce people and sort of give a little bit of background to people, you know, and he wanted to introduce, you know, me and give sort of background before one of the songs that I did. And I said, "No, Alan, I don't need that. I don't need that. Everybody knows me around here anyway." He goes, "No, I want to do that." He felt that I was still uncomfortable with that. So I said, "Look, here's what you do. You put a 20 in your pocket, and after I introduce you, you walk over me and pat me on the back and put the 20 in my pocket." He'd go, "Thanks, Alan." So I was paying him off, right? Yeah. So we did it, and it was the funniest thing in the concert. I mean, it was just like everybody got that it was hysterical that I was paying Alan off. I don't think I ever got the 20 back, Annie.
Do you want to come up?
Okay. So I also really connected with Alan with humor, but we've heard a lot about that. I was very impressed by his dedication, Annie and Alan's dedication together to this community here and so much that they provided. But the thing that was a little more hidden, not hidden, but a little more subtle with Alan was his wisdom, because he wasn't always like putting it out there, you know. So, but it would come up, I would hear things that he was saying. And so, and I know that he did that for Annie, right? Annie would sometimes tell me that like she wasn't in touch with her emotions, and he would say, Annie, I think you're feeling blah, 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 and you need to, right? And so.
And I would say, fuck you.
Yes. And then you're right. Yes, she would say F you, and you're right. But the F you was first. So. But I so appreciated that wisdom. I had to write some things down. I remember I said them. Sometimes he and sometimes we'd just be joking around, but sometimes we would have a conversation that would get very deep. And I remember at the end of a conversation we had where we were sharing about just life stuff that we were working on, things we had learned, and we both came to this gem of wisdom together, which was when we were talking about when we care so much about people or we care so much about something, and there's that overcare and there's that care that becomes a burden. And what he said was care, but don't carry it. Take that with you, please. Isn't that beautiful? Care, but don't carry it. And then one of the last times when I was talking with Annie on the phone and Alan was on the speakerphone, they were on a speakerphone, and he'd sort of listen, and just chime in every once in a while, was we were planning for a concert that's tomorrow, and he was, keep it simple. And I still have his voice in my ear as I'm like fussing over keep it simple, Lisa. Okay, thank you. Keep it simple, stupid. Well, there's that. He didn't say keep it simple, stupid to me. But I'm sure he said it, Jackie. So I will carry that wisdom. I treasure that side of Alan, too. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try and keep it together because for me, this is not just about Alan. I lost my husband a year ago as well, tragically. And for a year, no matter how sick he was, no matter what was going on with Alan, he would call me and check in. He would call me and make sure that I was okay. He'd call me at 2 o'clock in the morning and let me basically scream into the phone to the point where you couldn't understand what I was saying. But he was honest and caring and loving enough to say things like, I don't know. There is no answer. But that's okay. He also, the thing about, I'm going to be all over the place because I have all different things going on in my head. What's funny about the knife, and I think I told Annie this, and my kids know this, when Alan worked at Wenty, I was able to go to work with him for Take Your Kids to Work Day, which was, I was his niece, but I'm not, but we had that kind of relationship. He took me to work with him. I stayed in the kitchen with him all day, and he basically taught me every knife skill that I have now, which isn't great, but, I can cook because of Alan. I could experiment in the kitchen because of Alan, because of just that one lesson in the Wenty kitchen. Hold a knife like this. This is how you chop. This one can tell you. Hold a knife like this. This is how you chop. That one can. It passes down. That one lesson I have carried with me everywhere, and now they have it. I started many, many years ago. I was doing Pampered Chef, and I got all super excited, and I used him all the time because we had these really cool knives. The tang was all the way to the bottom, and I always used to talk about how he told me how the weight of the knife was the biggest thing, and how he taught me how to hold a knife, and what a good knife really meant. And so it's such a huge, beautiful thing that he gave you a knife. That was his thing. And a little bit further down the line, Alan was not always one to tell you what he thought directly. Sometimes it would come years later. Sometimes it would just kind of like pop out. I had a few boyfriends before I got married. And
Close your ears.
Shh.
I've heard these
Well, no,
stories.
he would say things like long down the line, especially the one before I met Scott. You know, I never liked him anyway. I had a feeling about him from the very beginning, and I tried to tell you. Or you know, he would just go, you better watch it with that one. And because, you know, I was 17, 18, 19, 20, I was like, whatever. I'm just going to do, you know, whatever. He was always right. He was always right. And he and my late husband shared many, many of the same traits in that way. He's always right. Very quiet unless he needed to be. But when I met Scott, so Scott and I got engaged 6 months after we met. Like, it's so eerie, actually. Scott is the one who never left. Like Annie went on a date with Alan, never left. Scott is the one who never left. Like, had to kick him out at 2 a.m., kind of, like, time to go. And we were together forever. We will be together forever, no matter what happens from now. But we got engaged 6 months after we met, and Alan said, this one I like. This one's okay. You know, and they would talk about that. I know that they had conversations. I know that they had conversations on our wedding day about, I don't remember exactly what they were, but I know that Scott had shared that they had a conversation about, you know, he stepped in to that father role even when I didn't want it, even when I would push him away. He would persevere or quietly stand there and just do it. And I don't know, that's it. But that's just who he was. And, you know, and he was patient. And he definitely, I want everybody to know, Dina's seen it, he would tell me off like he was my dad. Like, he just did it.
I think he did it in front of me and Ava.
As an adult, he would tell me off. One of my favorite memories when I was about Aiden's age, he's 12, was Halloween at Dina's. I don't know if you remember this. So I don't remember the whole circumstances, but we were having a Halloween party. She was having a Halloween party, and he disappeared. And, like, you know, I noticed. I don't know if anybody else noticed, but I was suddenly, like, because he's a big guy, where's Alan, right? Came running through, head to toe, dressed like a werewolf. Scared everybody to death. Scared me to death, yeah. Totally, like, hair, everything. He was just silly, you know. It was silly when he needed to be silly. He was on it when he needed to be on it. Yeah, he was an amazing person, and I am so glad that our relationship changed from crummy teenager to appreciative adult. So I'm grateful for all of that in my life.
Thank you, Jesse. I think we have a song.
Hello. This is a song that Annie asked me to sing, and she said that it always makes her think of her and Alan. And I have now fallen in love with this song. I remember the days of just keeping time, of hanging around in sleepy towns forever. Back roads empty for miles. Well, you can't have a dream and cut it to fit, but when I saw you, I knew we'd go together. Like a wink and a smile.
you found a new genre, Lisa. That was absolutely beautiful. Well, I'd like to close with a couple of prayers, actually. The first one is for Alan. This was the daily word on the date of his transition, May 26, 2019. I've adapted it a little bit, just for Alan. The words were, "In the silence. In the silence, I find peace. In the silence, I find self. Rather than allow my mind to easily be swayed by outer circumstances, I look beyond appearances to the truth of my being. I do this by turning within to a place of peace, the silence where I realize God. Any negative or limiting thoughts now dissipate. Here in the silence, I am one with Spirit. In this conscious awareness of my higher power, I recognize my spiritual attributes that are mine through divine grace. Here I find the strength I seek, the love that sustains me, and the peace to soothe my soul. I take those elements with me. I am born anew." And Alan wouldn't want it to end with something just for him. I think that he would like me to share something for you, something I imagine he might say. This is adapted for Alan. Again, it's a reading called the Memorial Service Reading. "Now that I'm gone, remember me with a smile and laughter. And if you need to cry, cry with your brother and sister who walk beside you. When you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you with this. Look for me in the people I have known and loved or helped in some way. Let me live in your kindness, in your eyes, in your mind, in your heart, and your acts of compassion and care. Love me by letting love live within the circle of your embracing arms. Love does not die, bodies do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away as best you can. I'll see you in paradise." And so let's just have one short prayer for our final blessings in this gathering, but our continued blessings for Alan. Alan, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the living divine in you. We give thanks for your time with us on earth and your continued time in spirit and presence. And the source of all being, we give thanks that this soul was a part of our walk in this journey we call life. Thank you, God. And thank you, Alan. And so it is. Alan, or Annie? Alan? Whoa, Alan's here. Annie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Mm-hmm. Is that okay for you?
That's okay. Hey, thank you everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. You know, the day after Alan transitioned, he came in really, really strong to me. And I've told many of you, his energy and his vibration was so strong and so beautiful and so uplifted. The last year had been particularly tough for him, and some of you know that he really struggled for years with depression. And that was all lifted. All the physical junk that had been the previous year, all gone. He felt the best that I have ever felt him. So if there's anything I can't feel bad for him, and I can't feel bad for me, because my Lord, he is just feeling terrific. And I know a lot of you, how many of you have actually had a conversation with Alan since he left? Yeah, a good number of people. And at the Spiritualist Church, he came in, I went to the Spiritualist Church a few days later, and he came into several mediums that were just like, whoa, how did he do this so quickly? Because sometimes people don't ever come in, and I don't know the answers to all of that, but he was a communications major when he was in college. So that might have been it. I'm not sure. Hi. And you'll see these little cards around. I don't know where they got put, but okay. When I got home from the hospital, Alan had been gone for less than an hour. I got in the driveway, and people had called me, so I sat in the car, so I didn't want to go into the house, and I pulled up my messages, and I got this message that said, "We've been referred to you by San Leandro Hospital, and we need you to call us right away. It's very important." And I'm like, what? You know, it's like he's gone. Why are they, like, why? But I called, and it was the Donor Network West. Alan had signed up to be a donor when he got his driver's license the first time when he was like 16 or 17. And they were calling about that. And I'm like, but wait a minute, he's been gone for an hour. You can't, that doesn't do any good. Well, apparently they can do skin and bones. And, you know, he had been so sick, I thought there was nothing left, and corneas. So the other thing that I learned is that there's a law passed in California last January. Do you know that you're all donors in the state of California? And I think that's fantastic. But also, you can go on to this website that's on here, and you can opt out if you want, or you can say, you know, everything but my kidneys, you know, or whatever you want to do. And it's important to let your family know, because I was kind of shocked to get that phone call. If something happens to you, your family's going to get that question. It's automatic in the state of California. And I am so pleased. The Donor Network West was fabulous. I'm going to be calling them again. They have called me like 3 or 4 times to see how I'm doing. I've become friends with one of them, actually. But that's a whole different issue. But in about a year, they said, please contact us, and we'll let you know where his tissue went. And so, you know, the tissue on one person can go many. It could go to, you know, like 20, 30 people. It's just like, wow. So how cool is that? Even though it's weird and kind of surreal as it was. But when Al and I planned this service, and we did that, we put it together in about 10 minutes. When I went in to see Reverend Kristen, she said, so what do we want to do? I said, well, here. This is what we got. She said, oh, I forgot you're a production person. And Alan and I picked the music together, and we picked the readings that happened. And there's one other thing that I want you to help me with the first line. There's one other thing that we want to share with you. Some things in life are bad. They can really make you sad. Other things can make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, don't grumble, give a whistle. And this'll help things turn out for the best. And always look at the bright side of life. Always look at the right side of life. If life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten, and that's to laugh and smile and dance and play. When you're feeling in the dumps, don't be final word. You must always face the curtain with a bow. Forget about your sin, give the audience a grin. Enjoy it, it's your last chance anyhow. So always look on the bright side of death.
Did they just say that?
Yes, I think they did.
Just before you draw your terminal breath. Life's a bit of shit when you look at it. Life's a laugh and death's a joke, you know. You'll always, it's a show, keep on laughing as you go. Just remember that the last laugh is on you. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
Should we wrap this up?